In the mist-shrouded valleys of Nanga, in Zimbabwe's eastern Manicaland province, where the eastern highlands rise like ancient guardians against the sky, Rekayi Tangwena was born around 1910. As the son of Zeka, a lineage holder in the Newa Simbodi clan, he grew up amidst the Tangwena people, also known as the Tambu, a resilient community whose ancestors had tended the fertile lands of the Hande Valley for generations. These were no ordinary hills. They were sacred, etched with the spirits of forebears, rivers like the Gairezi flowing as lifelines through rugged terrain that colonial maps would later carve up without mercy. Tangwena's early life was steeped in the traditions of chieftainship, but the encroaching shadow of British colonialism would forge him into a symbol of unyielding resistance. By the mid-20th century, the Tangwena people's homeland had been ensnared in the web of Rhodesia's Land Apportionment Act of 1930, a racist decree that designated vast swathes of fertile land for white settlers while relegating Africans to barren reserves. Their ancestral territory, known as Gairezi, was reclassified as European land, sold to white farmers like William Hanmer, who turned it into a ranch for cattle and crops. The Tangwena were branded squatters on their own soil, tenants at the whim of colonial authorities. But Tangwena, ascending to chieftainship in 1966 after his father's death, refused to bow. He saw the evictions not merely as theft of land, but as an assault on the soul of his people, their graves, their rituals, their very identity tied to the earth. The resistance began in earnest in the late 1960s, when Hanmer and the Rhodesian government issued eviction orders in 1967, demanding that the Tangwena relocate to distant, infertile areas like Gakwe. Chief Tangwena stood firm. "This is our land, inherited from our ancestors," he declared, rallying his people in defiant gatherings under the acacia trees. He led protests to the Nyanga police station, where colonial officers met them with batons and arrests. Tangwena himself was hauled before courts in Salisbury, now Harare, more than a dozen times, charged with trespassing and incitement. Yet each time he returned to Gairezi, his spirit unbroken. In 1969, the regime escalated. Bulldozers rumbled into the valley, flattening homes, scattering livestock, and uprooting crops. Flames devoured thatched roofs as families watched in horror. Over 2,000 Tangwena people were displaced, forced into makeshift camps or across the border into Mozambique. But Tangwena's bravery ignited a fire that colonial forces could not extinguish. He fused traditional authority with emerging nationalist fervor, drawing support from figures like Didymus Mutasa and even white sympathizers who smuggled supplies. His people, hiding in mountain caves and using guerrilla tactics, repeatedly returned to rebuild. "We are not squatters. We are the owners," Tangwena proclaimed in court, his voice echoing through the halls of injustice. The Rhodesian press dubbed him Ian Smith's troublesome African chief, a badge he wore with pride. Women like his wife, Mbuya Tangwena, stood shoulder to shoulder, organizing food and shelter amid the chaos. This was no mere land dispute. It was a microcosm of the broader anti-colonial struggle, where Tangwena's defiance inspired ZANU nationalists. By 1970, many Tangwena had fled to Mozambique, joining ZANLA camps, their paths through the mountains becoming secret arteries for the liberation war. Tangwena's resistance cost lives, beatings, deaths from exposure, but it forged unbreakable ties to the guerrilla movement, setting the stage for his most audacious act. As the 1970s dawned, Rhodesia's bush war intensified, with ZANU's armed wing, ZANLA, launching incursions from Mozambique. Robert Mugabe and Edgar Tekere, freshly released from a decade in Rhodesian prisons in late 1974, emerged as key figures in the fractured nationalist movement. Detained for their fiery anti-colonial rhetoric, they had endured isolation but honed their resolve. Upon release, they faced constant surveillance, house arrests, and the threat of reincarceration. The assassination of ZANU chairman Herbert Chitepo in Zambia in March 1975 heightened the urgency. Mugabe, seen as a potential successor, needed to reach Mozambique to unify factions and lead the armed struggle against Ian Smith's white minority rule. Enter Chief Rekayi Tangwena, whose reputation as a staunch ally preceded him. Living in semi-exile near the border after years of evasion, Tangwena had already sheltered nationalists at his homestead in Nafuro. On April 4, 1975, under the cover of a moonless night, Mugabe and Tekere arrived at his domain, disguised and weary. Tangwena, now in his mid-60s but wiry and resolute, greeted them with the gravity of a warrior elder. "The ancestors will guide us," he assured, invoking spirits that had protected his people through evictions. Accompanied by his brother Peter, nephew Nakarita, and a small band of trusted guides, they set off on a perilous 40-kilometer trek through the eastern highlands. The route was treacherous. Hidden mountain paths snaked along the Gairezi River, through dense forests and steep ravines patrolled by Rhodesian forces. Tangwena's intimate knowledge of the terrain, gleaned from generations of herding and hunting, proved invaluable. They evaded checkpoints by crossing streams barefoot, whispering in the dark to avoid detection. At one point, Rhodesian soldiers nearly intercepted them, but Tangwena's scouts diverted the patrol with decoy fires. Mugabe, the scholarly intellectual, and Tekere, the fiery organizer, relied entirely on Tangwena's ingenuity. "We walked like ghosts," Tekere later recounted in his memoir, crediting Tangwena's feigned falls to scout ahead without suspicion. Mbuya Tangwena, ever the pillar, had urged her husband forward, preparing food packets and rallying the community to silence. After 2 grueling days, they crossed into Mozambique, reaching ZANLA camps where Mugabe would consolidate power. This escape was no minor feat. It prevented Mugabe's likely assassination or arrest, allowing him to emerge as ZANU's leader at the conference in 1976. Tangwena's act escalated the war, funneling recruits through his border networks. Rhodesian reprisals followed, raids on Tangwena villages, but the chief remained elusive, a phantom in the hills. His bravery bridged traditional leadership and modern nationalism, proving that ordinary chiefs could alter history's course. Zimbabwe's independence in 1980 marked the triumph of Tangwena's lifelong fight. The Lancaster House Agreement ended the war, and Mugabe's ZANU-PF swept to power. Tangwena returned from exile, his people reclaiming Gairezi Ranch amid land reforms. Appointed a senator in the new parliament, he advocated for rural development and land rights, his voice now amplified in the halls he once defied. "The land is ours again," he declared, symbolizing the reversal of colonial dispossession. Yet Tangwena remained humble, tending his fields and advising on reconciliation. His death on June 11, 1984, from a short illness at age 74, prompted national mourning. He was declared a national hero, buried at Heroes Acre with full honors. Mbuya Tangwena carried his torch, leading community efforts until her death in 2013, and was also honored as a liberation heroine. Their story inspired narratives like Donald Moore's Suffering for Territory, chronicling how Tangwena's evictions entangled race, power, and place. Today, roads like Rekayi Tangwena in Masvingo bear his name, and oral histories in Manicaland recount his exploits to new generations. His resistance prefigured the Third Chimuriha land reforms of the 2000s, though controversies linger. Tangwena's legacy endures as a beacon. In an era of displacement, he taught that true power lies in rooted defiance. His life inspires beyond borders, a reminder that one chief's courage can topple empires. In Zimbabwe's ongoing quest for justice, Tangwena whispers, "Stand firm, for the land and freedom are worth every scar."